What if I told you that every time you buy a video game, you're not actually buying the game? What if I told you there's software secretly running on your computer right now that can lock you out of the games that you paid for, slow down your PC, and maybe even spy on you? And what if I told you that this software designed to help prevent piracy doesn't even really work at stopping pirates? Welcome to the world of DRM, or Digital Rights Management. Today we're going to take a look into DRM, what it is, why it absolutely sucks for gamers, why companies still use it, and most importantly, what alternatives exist that could make gaming better for everyone. But what exactly is DRM? Think of it like this. Imagine you buy a car, but the dealership installs a special lock that randomly checks if you're the real owner. Sometimes this lock malfunctions and won't let you start your car. Sometimes it calls the dealership every time you drive somewhere, and if the dealership goes out of business, well, your car might become a very expensive paperweight. But essentially that's what DRM does to your games. DRM stands for Digital Rights Management, and it's software that game companies will add to prevent piracy. The most common type you'll encounter is a piece of crap called Denuvo. And trust me, you'll learn to hate that name if you haven't already. But here's how it works. When you launch a game with DRM, it doesn't just start the game. Instead, it first runs a bunch of background checks, asking like, is this a legitimate copy? Is your hardware the same as yesterday? Are you connected to the internet? Did the stars all align properly? Only after jumping through all of these digital hoops are you maybe allowed to play the game that you already bought. But here's the kicker. More often than not, these checks are happening constantly, even while you're playing, not just when you start the game. Every few minutes, DRM is running in the background, eating up your CPU and your memory like some giant annoying digital motherfucking parasite. But what are some other reasons that DRM is absolutely terrible for anyone who actually wants to, play games? First up is performance. Remember how I said DRM will usually constantly run checks? Well, those checks use your computer's processing power, and studies have shown games run significantly better without DRM. Like, we're even talking about 10 to 15% better frame rates in some cases. Who doesn't want better frame rates? For example, the game Guardians of the Galaxy runs perfectly fine most of the time. But in CPU-intensive areas, Denuvo causes noticeable frame drops, especially on older processors. If you've got a beast gaming rig, you might not notice, but if you're on an older system or you can't afford a beast gaming rig, because let's be honest, they are expensive, DRM or Denuvo could be the difference between playable and unplayable. Then there's the always online requirement, even for single player games. Remember SimCity back in 2013? It required a constant internet connection just to play alone. The servers crashed on day one and nobody could play the game that they paid for. Diablo 3 had the same problem. Single player game, but you needed the internet to play. Why? Oh, because of DRM. Duh. The game literally wouldn't start without phoning home to Blizzard servers. And here's the really scary part. DRM is killing game preservation, because when companies shut down their authentication servers, games just die forever. Let's be real. If the game's no longer profitable, companies have every right to shut down their servers. But why is DRM what is standing in the way of preserving our video games? Take Might and Magic X Legacy. When Ubisoft shut down the online servers, players couldn't progress past Act 1 or use the DLC they'd already paid for. The game became partially unplayable overnight. And The Crew is another example. Ubisoft shut that game down and people paid for that game and now they can't play it anymore. I mean, 87% of games made before 2010 are at risk of becoming completely unplayable due to DRM. And we're talking about losing decades of gaming history because of what? corporate greed. And like, don't even get me started on false positives. Anti-cheat DRM systems have banned innocent players for having the wrong software running. Things like RGB lighting software, streaming software, even accessibility tools have triggered false bans. Imagine getting permanently banned from a game you paid for because your keyboard has RGB lighting that the DRM doesn't like. And like, yeah, I understand part of this is trying to help with cheaters, and we don't want cheaters, but come on, there's gotta be a better way. Now, finally, there's the privacy issue. Some DRM systems require what's called kernel level access to your computer. That's basically giving them the master key to your entire system. They can see everything you're running, everything you have installed, and potentially access any file on your computer. Are they doing it? Most likely not. The scary part is you do give them permission to. So if they wanted to, what's stopping them? I mean, would you give a stranger complete access to your computer just to play a video game? Because that's essentially what you're doing with some of these DRM systems. Like, come on, it's 2025. We can find a better way to do this stuff. Will it be expensive? Yes. Time intensive? Yes. But better player experience? Yeah. I'm gonna be on the side of the player experience here. But even with all of this, DRM must at least be effective at stopping piracy, right? Because that's supposedly the whole point of its existence. Wrong. Wrong. I'll give you the dirty little secret that the gaming industry doesn't want you to know. DRM doesn't really work at all. Games with the strongest DRM protection still get cracked, usually within days or weeks of release. Denuvo, the supposedly uncrackable DRM that's a piece of has been defeated on thousands of games. Even worse, pirated versions of these games often run better than legitimate copies because those who crack the games are able to remove the DRM. So people who steal the game, they get a superior experience to paying customers. Like, how messed up is that? Fix this issue, lower the prices, don't kill my games, maybe we'll pirate less, but also maybe not. Meanwhile, guess who suffers? You, the paying customer. The person who did everything right and bought the game legally gets the worst experience. Where's my incentive to buy the game legally and outright? You gotta give me something here. So if DRM doesn't work and everyone hates it, why do companies keep using it? I am glad you asked. First, it's about investor confidence. Publishers can tell their shareholders, don't worry, we're protecting your investment with state-of-the-art anti-piracy technology. It's all just security theater. It looks like they're doing something, even if that something is ultimately completely useless at the end of the day, or even a detractor. Many people won't even buy a game if it has DRM. They'll just wait for it to get cracked and then pirate it that way. Second, they believe in something called launch window protection. The theory is that even if DRM only delays piracy by a few weeks, most sales happen in those first few weeks anyway. So they feel like they're really not losing out on much. Whether this actually works is debatable, but executives love theories that justify their bad decisions. Third, DRMs give companies control. They can track how you play, when you play, where you play. They can force updates, disable features, or even just remotely delete the content that you've paid for. And finally, the big one, DRM creates vendor lock-in. Once you've built a library of 200 games on Steam, for example, you're not likely to switch platforms, thus making your games forever tied to that service. But here's the good news, and developers, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a secret here. There are better ways to protect games and generate revenue without screwing over customers. First up, going completely DRM-free. GOG has built their entire business model around this. They sell DRM-free games, and guess what? They're profitable. Shocking, I know, right? When you buy a game from GOG, you get the actual game files. You can copy them, back them up, install them on multiple computers, and play offline forever. You know, like how buying things used to work? And here's the kicker, GOG's games don't get pirated more than other platforms. In fact, many developers report similar or even better sales on GOG compared to DRM protected platforms. Second, Steam's basic DRM actually can show you how it can be done right. Sure, you need Steam to launch games, but once they're running, most games work fine offline. Steam doesn't constantly phone home or run performance killing checks. It's DRM that mostly stays out of your way. Yeah, that's a deal breaker for some players, which again, I'll point you back to GOG, but many Steam games can even be launched directly from their exe files without Steam running at all. I mean, that's how DRM should work, right? Minimal and unobtrusive, if we can't go with none at all. A third would be something like a simple one-time activation that isn't constantly checking the servers. Think like old Windows activation, you verify once and then you're left alone. And some games actually do this really well by checking legitimacy on first launch, creating a local license file, and never requiring the internet again unless for some reason you need to reinstall. This stops casual piracy without ruining the experience for legitimate buyers. Now, finally, and this is a really important one, build trust with your audience. When developers are transparent, communicate well, and treat their customers with respect, people want to support them. I mean, look at little indie darlings like Hades, Celeste, or Stardew Valley. Their success comes from goodwill as much as quality. People pirate faceless corporations. They buy from developers they like and want to support. That doesn't mean that piracy will go away completely, but DRM wouldn't be stopping those anyway. Now, I know some of you are thinking, that's great, but what about when companies insist on using DRM? Well, that's a fair point. If we have to have DRM, let's at least make it suck less. The least awful approach, in my opinion, is the simple one-time verification. Check the game is legitimate on first launch, create that local license, then never do it again. Some older games actually did this very well. They verify once during that installation, then you're good to go forever. This, again, stops that casual copying without ongoing performance hits or always online requirements, or even security issues like with the kernel level. If for some reason you must have periodic checks, at least be reasonable about it. Give players a 30-day offline grace period. Steam actually does this, and you can play most games offline for weeks before it demands you go online again. This will handle legitimate scenarios like traveling, internet outages, or just wanting to play old games years later, and that would also help with the end-of-life practices of decoupling that DRM and that always online requirement to help preserve games. And here's the most radical of all ideas. Put a sunset clause on your DRM. Maybe something like after 6 to 12 months, just patch it out. The launch window is when most sales happen anyways. Games like Metro Exodus actually did this. They removed Denuvo after the initial sales period. Doing something like this shows good faith to customers and can ensure long-term game preservation. Links in the description for Stop Killing Games if you're in the EU or the UK. So what can you do as a gamer to fight back against DRM? First, you can vote with your wallet. Support DRM-free platforms like GOG, itch.io, and Humble Bundle's DRM-free section. When you have a choice between a DRM-free version and a locked-down version, why not choose freedom? Second, make noise. Leave negative reviews for games with intrusive DRM, post on social media. Let the developers know that DRM affects your purchasing decisions and your experience with their game. Games like Mortal Kombat 11 actually had their DRM removed after enough player complaints about performance issues, so your voice matters. And third, support games and developers that respect your rights. Indies especially need your support to prove that DRM-free can be profitable. Please support the Stop Killing Games initiative. The initiative itself isn't going to remove DRM, but because of the issues that DRM causes with game preservation, it is more likely that this will have to be addressed long term. The future of gaming doesn't have to include DRM. Look, the bottom line is this: DRM doesn't really stop piracy, but it absolutely ruins the experience for paying customers. It's security theater that makes games worse while accomplishing nothing. But there's hope. Every time you buy a DRM-free game, support an indie developer, or simply refuse to put up with the always online nonsense, you're voting for a better future. Gaming should be about fun, creativity, and amazing experiences, not corporate control and digital restrictions. But I want to hear from you. What's your worst DRM experience? Have you ever been locked out of a game you paid for? And let me know in the comments below. Also, if you're interested, I'm working on a deep dive video into Denuvo specifically because they're the most egregious DRM and the one I hate the most. If you want to support DRM-free gaming, I've got links to GOG and the Stop Killing Games initiative in the description box. So remember, you deserve to actually own the games you buy. Thanks for your time. And